Now, this is a woman who runs a small kiosk, a small restaurant, and she's in charge of cooking, that's production. She's also in charge of serving the customers. She's in charge of customer complaints. She's in charge of payment, everything. You think that she's gonna be efficient compared to maybe a McDonald's restaurant where there's a special counter for payment, another counter for ordering food. The cooks are inside the kitchen producing food 247, and there are waiters everywhere waiting for customers to come. The difference will be clear because this one is gonna be very efficient compared to this. So this is what happens among living organisms in biology. Now we have simple organisms and we have complex organisms, and let's represent simple organisms with a member of the kingdom Monera, maybe bacteria. All right, and let's represent the complex group with a man. Pardon my drawing, I'm gonna use a stick man actually. All right, now monerans are very simple. What they just have, everything that concerns them, is the cell wall. All right, they don't even have a nucleus. So what you are going to have here is just a DNA strand. All right, then this cell wall is not even made up of cellulose, just peptidoglycan. All right, peptidoglycans. That's what makes up the cell wall of bacteria. But this man here, a lot of things are going on. I mean, the biochemistry alone will overwhelm you. Of course, so many students go to university to study biochemistry, only the medical biochemistry going on in man. Then the anatomy of this man, the bones, the muscles, everything that goes on from the limbs, the upper limb and the lower limb, to the head and the neck, is a whole lot to handle. All right, then the physiology, the health, the diseases going on is very, very, very complex, man. All right, so you can see that this is a simple organism and this is a complex organisms. Now in today's class we're going to be talking about advantages of complexity in higher organisms and the disadvantages of complexity. You're welcome to Saboj Video Lessons. I am Saboj. You do well to subscribe to this channel if you are joining us for the first time, and if you've been watching our tutorial videos, you are welcome back. All right, so what are the advantages of complexity in higher organisms? First of all, it leads to cellular differentiation. And when we talk about cellular differentiation, we mean a group of similar cells being differentiated to form tissues that carry out similar function. In our last class under organization of life, we said that group of cells come together to form a tissue, right? Now when these cells are differentiated, all of them come together to form a tissue. What happens is called differentiation, cellular differentiation, cellular differentiation, cellular differentiation. So what do you think happens when cells differentiate? It makes them to be able to carry a particular function in the human body. Do you understand? For example, let's say in plants, when the xylem cells come together, they form the xylem tissues, and these xylem tissues are in charge of transporting water from the roots to the leaves and the stem for photosynthesis. Have you seen that particular function has been solved? Now in a McDonald's restaurant, when two or more cooks come together, and this one is cooking rice, this one is cooking plantain, this one is cooking spaghetti, and all of them are making meal that will serve the general public. Have you seen that these particular people performing different functions, they have aggregated into one unit performing a function for the organization? Do you understand this? Now another advantage is that it leads to internal structural specialization, specialty. All right, so this particular group of cells, this particular group of tissues, these organs, this particular part of the body, it is known for this particular function, specialization. We are not doing everything. All right, so in economics, they told us that division of labor makes for specialization. It means these people, oh, these people are in charge of this. Oh, look at the cooks, look at the waiters, look at the payment unit. Do you understand? So it creates specialization so that when something is going wrong, we can catch the real person. All right, when the food is not sweet, we can say, oh, the cooks, you guys made this mistake. Do you understand? Yeah. So we don't need to do a long talk while examining the patient. When we see the sign, we know that wow, it must be the respiratory system. Do you understand? This is differentiation. Now, thirdly, mutual interdependence between component cells. Now, in a McDonald's restaurant, for that restaurant to be successful, every unit must be functioning and they must depend on one another. Nobody stays in isolation. So, in the human body, for instance, as a complex unit, every part of the body, both the systems, the organs, everything, they are cooperating. All right, all the systems are cooperating to make sure that this guy is healthy. And if anyone slacks, this guy becomes sick. So intermutual dependence between all the components of the organism. Now the next one is that complexity leads to efficiency. It makes this guy efficient. It makes him healthy when everything, due to the complexity, these guys are doing this, oh, these guys are doing respiration, these guys are doing reproduction, everything is efficient. When he wants to have children, reproductive organs are there, he has children. When he wants to breathe, when he wants energy, respiratory system is there. Do you understand? So that is efficiency for you. All right, so compared to this guy, just one woman running everything in her shop, she's going to be overwhelmed and she won't be efficient. One day she'll be sick and customers will come to her shop and there is no food at all. Right? Now, complexity leads to increase in size because this guy has many organs inside. That's why he's big. But this guy, he doesn't have many things, just cell wall, DNA, and cytoplasm. Is done. All right, so that's why it is very small. That's why we have microscopic organisms, because there are no more structures. All right, you have to zoom before you find them, but this guy has a lot of things. All right, that's why he is very big. All right, so the next is that complexity increases adaptation to environment, because this guy is very complex. He's more adapted to his environment. He can survive anywhere. Put him in an aeroplane in the air, he can survive. All right, because there's a system in his body that can adapt to that situation. Even put him in the sea, he can survive because there's a system in his body that can adapt. All right, put him on top of the mountain, he can adapt. But carry a fish from the water and put it on the soil, it will die. All right, I've seen that human beings are more complex than fishes. That's why they can survive in different weathers. All right, there's some animals, if you take them from this particular weather to another weather, they will die, but not man. All right, that's why if you relocate from Nigeria to Canada, you can easily adapt. Right, the next one, reproduction in complex organisms does not lead to the disintegration of the parents. If this guy wants to reproduce, him just split into two. You're gonna miss that woman that always cooks for us. Okay, so human beings don't need to die before they reproduce. All they just need to do is to get the male and the female, and a new child is born. All right, so that's complexity for you because there's a reproductive system there. Right, so next, due to the specialization and efficiency of organs, tissues, and systems, complex organisms have longer lifespan than unicellular organisms. This guy, it might even surprise you that it divides through mitosis. Okay, you have two types of cell division: mitosis and meiosis. Meiosis is for reproduction. All right, but mitosis is basically cell division. Some organisms divide every 24 hours. That's why viruses, bacteria, they multiply into thousands, into billions in just a day. Okay, because they don't even last. But this guy can stay up to 40 years, 60 years without dying. Now, what are the disadvantages? Remember, everything that has advantage has disadvantage as well. So the first disadvantage is that this complex organism, the cells has inability to exist on their own. All right, they always depend on other organisms. All right, so one cook in this restaurant cannot just cook everything. He has to depend on the person cooking other food, all right? The person fetching water, the person supplying this and that, the person supplying meat to make a good, sumptuous meal. Do you understand? So, unicellular organisms have a large surface area to volume ratio, all right? Thus, movement of substances by diffusion is not efficient in multicellular organisms. This guy, diffusion can solve all the problems, but this one, diffusion cannot solve all the problems. There are many other mechanisms by which, this guy exchanges substances between cells. You have endocytosis, active transport, passive transport, exocytosis, osmosis, and the rest to make sure that it communicates with other parts of the environment. All right. Now, complexity leads to slower rate of respiration. Now, this guy, diffusion is enough. All right. Many organisms, diffusion is just enough to supply their oxygen need. But this guy, he's gonna breathe, and the air is going to move from the trachea to the bronchi to the bronchioles, then into the lungs. Then the lungs will send it to the alveoli, where it interacts with the capillary beds. Okay, respiration will now occur. Then this is just the anatomy. Then it's now enter a biochemical phase where enzymes are introduced. It's a very long process. Okay. Now, another disadvantage is that there is difficulty in reproduction. This guy, we're gonna be looking for an opposite gender. If he's a male, we'll be looking for a female. If not, he can't reproduce. All right, the next disadvantage of complexity in this guy, that's the higher organism, is that it leads to decrease in ability to regenerate. Let's take a plant, for instance. When you break the branch of a plant, come back next 2 weeks, you see the bud coming out and the branch will grow back, right? But cut this guy's hand, cut off his hand on his leg. What will happen? It won't grow back again because this is so complex. You have already altered a lot of cells, tissues, okay? And it may be very difficult to regenerate, except maybe in a very young child, all right? Maybe remove the finger or like this part of it, it will still grow back, all right? Because the cells are still young and they can easily divide to form new parts, all right? So the last disadvantage of complexity is that there is a proper coordination, actually, because remember we talked about mutual interdependence between all the components of this guy, the cells, the tissues, the organs, and the systems, all right? Now, because there's a mutual interdependence, there should be coordination. If not, things will actually go wrong. Now, what if the system that is coordinating every other component goes wrong? What do you think will happen? The system will break down. The organism will break down. So that coordination actually is achieved in man via two ways: the hormonal coordination and the nervous coordination. All right. So what if your brain shuts down? What will happen? Every other part of your body will shut down. All right. So that's the disadvantage of complexity, because there's a mutual interdependence, there's coordination. But when the coordination fails, every other part breaks down. All right. So can you answer some of these questions under this particular topic so that we can end the video? The first is that you state two advantages of complex structural organization in higher organism. Let me know in the comment section. This is WAEC 1996 question 1A. Which of the following statements about complexity of organism in Which of the following statements about complexity of organization in organisms is not true? A. It enables the organisms to perform specialized tasks. B. It enables the organisms to adapt to their environment. C. Body functions are limited and restricted to special conditions. And D. It enhances the organism's efficiency. E. All parts of the organism work in a coordinated fashion for the benefit of the organism. Did you enjoy this class? Subscribe to this channel for more videos and share this video to someone. God bless you.